A man walks into a courtroom wearing a worn suit and carrying a thin folder. No one knows he's about to flip the entire system upside down. When the judge shows contempt, mocks him, and orders his arrest illegally, no one expects what happens next. This is the story of a single father who turned a small courtroom into a battlefield for justice, and won. Stay until the end to see how this unfolds. Don't forget to hit like and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and old paper. Adrian Blake pushed through the heavy glass doors at 8:47 on a Tuesday morning, earlier than he needed to be there, because that's what you did when you couldn't afford to screw up. The building was one of those mid-century concrete boxes that counties threw up in the 70s when budgets were tight and aesthetics were optional. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. His sneakers squeaked on the tile. He wore his only jacket, a navy blazer he'd bought at Goodwill 3 years ago that didn't quite fit right in the shoulders. Underneath, a white button-down he'd ironed himself that morning while his daughter Mia ate cereal and asked why he had to go to court. He told her it was grown-up stuff, nothing to worry about. She was 7. She worried anyway. The folder under his arm held everything he had: lease agreement, payment receipts, photos of the water damage in the bathroom that his landlord refused to fix, text messages where the man promised repairs and then stopped responding. It wasn't much, but it was the truth. And Adrian had learned a long time ago that the truth had to be enough because it was all he could afford. He found courtroom 3B down a long hallway past offices with frosted glass windows. The door was heavy wood with a small rectangular window. Through it, he could see rows of benches, mostly empty. A bailiff stood near the front, arms crossed, looking bored. Adrian checked his watch. 9:15. His case wasn't scheduled until 10, but he wanted to see how things ran. Wanted to understand the rhythm of the room before he had to stand in it. He slipped inside quietly and took a seat in the back row, far right side. The bench was hard, cold even through his pants. 3 other people sat scattered across the room, an older woman in the second row clutching a purse, a man in a rumpled suit near the middle who kept checking his phone. And then there was her. She sat in the back row on the opposite side, partially hidden by the angle of the wooden partition that separated the gallery from the well of the court. Young, maybe mid-20s, dark hair pulled back tight. She wore black pants and a gray sweater. Nothing flashy, nothing that drew attention. But Adrian noticed her anyway because she wasn't looking at her phone. She was watching. Her eyes moved from the bench to the bailiff to the clerk's desk, slow and deliberate, like she was cataloging everything. He looked away before she could catch him staring. The judge entered at 9:30. Everyone stood. The bailiff announced him in a flat voice that suggested he'd done this 1,000 times and would do it 1,000 more. All rise. The Honorable Judge William Crane presiding. Crane was in his early 60s, gray hair combed back, wire-rimmed glasses perched on a narrow nose. His robe looked freshly pressed. He moved to the bench with the kind of authority that didn't need to be loud. He sat, adjusted his glasses, and glanced at the docket in front of him. "Be seated." The room settled. Crane's voice had an edge to it, like he was already annoyed before the day started. The first case was a traffic violation. A kid who looked barely old enough to drive stood nervously in front of the bench, hands in his pockets. His lawyer did most of the talking. Crane asked a few questions, didn't smile once, and issued a fine. The whole thing took 4 minutes. The second case was a woman contesting a parking ticket. She didn't have a lawyer. She tried to explain that the sign was confusing, that she'd only been parked there for 10 minutes, that it wasn't fair. Crane cut her off halfway through. "Ma'am, the law doesn't care if you found the sign confusing. The law cares if you broke it. You did. Pay the fine, or we'll move to collections." She stammered, tried again. Next case. The woman stood there for a second, mouth open, then walked away. Her face was red. Adrian watched the judge, watched the way Crane leaned back in his chair, the way his mouth twitched like he was holding back a smirk. This wasn't about justice. This was about power, about reminding people who was in charge. At 9:58, the bailiff called his name. Adrian Blake versus Hillstone Property Management. Adrian stood. His folder felt heavier than it should. He walked down the aisle, past the woman with the purse, past the man still on his phone. His footsteps echoed. He reached the small table on the left side of the courtroom, set his folder down, and waited. The landlord's lawyer was already there, a man in his 40s wearing a suit that probably cost more than Adrian made in a month. He didn't look at Adrian, didn't acknowledge him at all. Judge Crane glanced up from his paperwork. His eyes landed on Adrian, took in the ill-fitting blazer, the worn folder, the lack of a lawyer standing beside him. "Mr. Blake, I see you're representing yourself." "Yes, Your Honor." Crane's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his tone, a faint condescension, barely noticeable unless you were listening for it. "Proceed." Adrian opened his folder, took a breath. "Your Honor, I'm here because my landlord, Hillstone Property Management, has failed to make necessary repairs to my rental unit despite repeated requests. The lease agreement states that the landlord is responsible for maintaining the property in habitable condition. I've documented— How much rent do you pay, Mr. Blake?" The question came out of nowhere. Adrian paused. $900 a month." $900. Crane repeated it like it was an insult. "And you're taking up this court's time because of what? A leaky faucet?" "It's not a leaky faucet, Your Honor. It's significant water damage in the bathroom that's caused mold growth. I have photos." "Photos." Crane waved a hand dismissively. "Everyone has photos these days. Doesn't mean anything." The landlord's lawyer leaned forward slightly, smelling blood. "Your Honor, if I may, Mr. Blake has been a difficult tenant from the start. Multiple complaints from neighbors, late rent payments." "That's not true." Adrian's voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath. "I've never been late on rent. Not once. And there have been no complaints." The lawyer shrugged. "We have documentation." "Then show it." Crane banged his gavel once, not hard, just enough to make a point. "Mr. Blake, you don't get to make demands here. This is my courtroom." "I understand that, Your Honor. I'm simply asking to present my evidence." "Your evidence." Crane leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bench. "Let me tell you what I see, Mr. Blake. I see a man who probably hasn't paid his rent in months, looking for a legal loophole to avoid eviction. I see someone wasting this court's time with frivolous complaints because he doesn't want to take responsibility for his own situation." Adrian's jaw tightened. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "That's not what this is." "Isn't it?" Crane sat back, crossing his arms. "You know what your problem is, Mr. Blake. You think showing up here with a folder and a sob story entitles you to something? It doesn't." The landlord's lawyer smirked. Adrian took another breath. He wasn't going to let this man bait him. Not yet. "Your Honor, I have receipts showing every rent payment I've made for the past 2 years. I have text messages from the property manager acknowledging the damage and promising repairs. I have photos time-stamped and dated. All I'm asking is for the court to review the evidence and enforce the terms of the lease." Crane stared at him for a long moment. The courtroom was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. "No." Adrian blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I said no. I don't need to see your receipts or your text messages or your photos. This is a simple case. You're a tenant who doesn't like his living situation. Move out. Find somewhere else. Stop wasting my time." "Your Honor, with respect, I have a legal right to present evidence in my defense." Crane's eyes narrowed. "Are you telling me how to run my courtroom, Mr. Blake?" "I'm citing the law." "The law?" Crane let out a short laugh, humorless. "You've been watching too much TV. This isn't some legal drama where the underdog gets his big moment. This is real life. And in real life, people like you lose." "People like you." The words hung in the air. Adrian felt them settle into his bones. He'd heard variations of that phrase his whole life, from teachers who didn't think he'd amount to anything, from caseworkers who saw him as just another file, from people who looked at his zip code, his income, his skin, and decided they already knew his story. He'd learned to live with it, but he'd never learned to accept it. "Your Honor," Adrian said quietly, "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for what the law requires, that I be allowed to present my case. And I'm telling you that your case has no merit. You haven't reviewed the evidence." Crane's face darkened. "Excuse me?" "You haven't looked at a single document I brought. You haven't asked about the conditions of the property. You've made a judgment without reviewing any facts." The courtroom went still. The bailiff shifted his weight. The clerk stopped typing. Even the landlord's lawyer looked uncomfortable. Crane stood slowly. He was tall, and the elevation of the bench made him seem even taller. He pointed a finger at Adrian. You want to know what I see when I look at you, Mr. Blake? I see someone who thinks he's smarter than he is. Someone who thinks he can come into my courtroom and lecture me about the law. Someone who has no respect for the process or for this institution. I have nothing but respect for the law, Adrian said. That's why I'm here. No, Crane's voice rose. You're here because you're desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. Adrian's hands rested flat on the table in front of him. He didn't move them, didn't clench his fists, didn't give Crane anything to use against him. Your Honor, I respectfully request that you review the evidence I've brought. If after reviewing it you still believe my case has no merit, I'll accept that decision, but I have a right to be heard. Crane stared at him. The silence stretched. Then the judge smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. You want your right to be heard? Fine. Here's what I hear. I hear a man who doesn't know when to quit. I hear someone who thinks he can outsmart the system. And I hear someone who's about to learn a very important lesson about respect. He turned to the bailiff. Officer, remove Mr. Blake from the courtroom. Adrian didn't move. On what grounds? Contempt of court. I haven't been contemptuous. I've been respectful. I've followed every... You've wasted my time. You've argued with my rulings, and now you're refusing to leave when I've ordered you to. Officer, take him into custody. The bailiff hesitated, just for a second. It was enough for Adrian to see the uncertainty there. The man knew this wasn't right, but he was a bailiff, and Crane was a judge, and orders were orders. He moved toward Adrian. That's when the young woman in the back row stood up. Her movement was smooth, unhurried. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stepped forward into the aisle, and something about the way she carried herself made everyone turn. Your Honor, she said, her voice clear and firm. You can't do that. Crane's head snapped toward her. Who are you? My name is Lena Carter, and you're violating Mr. Blake's due process rights. The courtroom was dead silent now. Crane's face flushed red. Sit down. Now. Lena didn't sit. She walked closer, stopping at the bar that separated the gallery from the court. Mr. Blake has presented himself properly before this court. He's made a good faith effort to submit evidence. You've refused to review that evidence and are now ordering his detention without cause. That's a clear violation of his constitutional rights. This is my courtroom, Crane's voice echoed off the walls. And you have no standing here. I'm an observer, Lena said calmly. I have every right to be here, and what I'm observing is judicial misconduct. The landlord's lawyer stood abruptly. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Sit down, Crane snapped at him, then back to Lena. You think you can come into my courtroom and accuse me of misconduct? Do you have any idea who I am? I know exactly who you are, Judge Crane. There was something in the way she said it, something that made Crane pause, but only for a moment. Officer, remove her as well, both of them. I want them out of here, now. The bailiff looked between Crane and Lena, then at Adrian. He was a big man, probably ex-military, and he clearly didn't like where this was going. Your Honor, maybe we should... I gave you an order. Lena pulled out her phone, held it up. I've been recording since you entered the courtroom, Judge Crane. Everything you've said. Everything you've done. It's all documented. Crane went pale, then red. Then something beyond red. Recording in a courtroom without permission is illegal. Actually, Lena said, in this state, courtrooms are public spaces unless specifically sealed. Recording is permitted for members of the public and the press. I checked before I came. Give me that phone. No. Crane looked like he might have a stroke. He pointed at the bailiff again. Seize her phone. Do it now. The bailiff didn't move. Lena looked at Adrian. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Adrian understood. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. She'd been waiting for this. Crane was practically shaking now. If you don't comply with my orders, I will hold you both in contempt and have you arrested. I will make sure you spend the night in jail. Do you understand me? Adrian spoke quietly. You can't arrest someone for exercising their rights. But I can do whatever I want in my courtroom. No, Adrian said. You can't. And that's when Crane made his final mistake. Officer, cuff him. Both of them. I want them taken into custody immediately. Charge them with contempt, disruption, and anything else you can think of. The bailiff finally moved, but his movements were slow, reluctant. He approached Adrian with the handcuffs. Adrian didn't resist. He put his hands behind his back. The metal clicked around his wrists. Lena held up her phone higher, making sure the angle captured everything. "This is being recorded," she said again. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Judge William Crane is ordering the unlawful detention of a man who came to court seeking justice. He refused to review evidence. He denied due process. And now he's retaliating against anyone who questions his authority. "Get her out of here," Crane roared. A second bailiff appeared from the side door and moved toward Lena. She didn't resist either. She simply kept her phone up, kept recording, as they took her by the arm. Adrian was led toward the side exit. He glanced back once. The landlord's lawyer was gathering his papers quickly, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. The clerk sat frozen at her desk. The few people in the gallery stared in shock, and Judge Crane stood behind his bench, breathing hard, his face twisted in rage. The door closed behind Adrian with a heavy thud. The holding area was a small room with concrete walls and a metal bench. They sat him down, hands still cuffed behind his back. The bailiff who'd cuffed him stood by the door, looking uncomfortable. "I'm sorry about this," the man said quietly. Adrian didn't respond. He just sat there, breathing evenly, his mind already 3 steps ahead. A few minutes later, they brought Lena in. She still had her phone. They hadn't been able to take it from her without making things worse. She sat down next to Adrian, hands free. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah." "He's going to try to bury this." "I know." She looked at him closely. "You knew this would happen." It wasn't a question. Adrian met her eyes. "I had a pretty good idea." "You set this up." "I came here to present a case. What happened after that?" He shrugged as much as the cuffs would allow. "That was all him." Lena smiled slightly. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both." They sat in silence for a moment. From somewhere down the hall, they could hear voices, footsteps, the building settling. "How long have you been watching him?" Adrian asked. 6 months. We've had complaints about Crane for years, but nothing stuck. He's careful, knows how to stay just on the right side of the line." She paused. "Usually. But not today. Not today." The door opened. A different officer appeared, older, with sergeant stripes on his uniform. He looked at Adrian, then at Lena, then at the bailiff. "Uncuff him." The bailiff moved immediately, relief visible on his face. The cuffs came off. Adrian rubbed his wrists. "What's happening?" Lena asked. The sergeant's expression was carefully neutral. "There's been a development." He stepped aside. And behind him, wearing a suit that actually fit and carrying a briefcase that cost more than Adrian's car, was a man with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone used to being listened to. "Mr. Blake," the man said, "my name is Richard Hollis. I'm with the State Attorney General's office." Adrian stood slowly. Hollis looked at Lena. "Ms. Carter, I believe you have something we need to see." She held up her phone. Hollis nodded. "Good. Judge Crane has just been informed that his courtroom is now part of an active investigation. He's been removed from the bench, effective immediately pending review." The sergeant shifted his weight. "There's a camera crew outside. News broke about 10 minutes ago." Adrian processed this. "How?" Lena answered. "I sent the video to 3 different news outlets before they brought me back here. It's already viral." Hollis set his briefcase down and opened it. He pulled out a document. "Mr. Blake, I need to ask you some questions, but first I need to inform you of something." He paused. "We know who you are." Adrian said nothing. "Adrian Blake, age 32, single father, works 2 jobs to support his daughter." Hollis glanced at the paper. "Also happens to be a graduate of Columbia Law School, passed the bar on your first try. Worked briefly as a public defender before..." He looked up. "Before your wife died and you had to take care of your daughter full-time." The room went very quiet. "You let your law license lapse 3 years ago," Hollis continued. "Stopped practicing. Took whatever work you could find that let you be home for your kid." He closed the folder. So when you walked into that courtroom this morning, you knew exactly what you were doing. Adrian's voice was steady. I knew the law. I knew my rights. And I knew that Crane had a pattern of abusing people who couldn't fight back. Why didn't you identify yourself as an attorney? Because I'm not. Not anymore. And because it shouldn't matter. The law is supposed to protect everyone, not just people with fancy degrees. Hollis studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was the first genuine smile Adrian had seen all day. Fair enough. Lena stood. What happens now? Now, Hollis said. We finish what Mr. Blake started. He looked at Adrian. We've been building a case against Judge Crane for months. Witness intimidation, bias, violation of due process. But we needed something concrete, something undeniable. And I gave it to you. You did. Hollis extended his hand. Thank you. Adrian shook it. There's going to be a lot of attention on this, Hollis warned. Media, interviews, it's going to get messy. I don't care about that. What do you care about? Adrian thought about Mia, about the look on her face that morning when she asked if he'd be home for dinner, about the apartment with the leaking bathroom and the mold that wouldn't stop growing, about every person who'd ever walked into Judge Crane's courtroom and walked out feeling smaller than when they came in. I care about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Hollis nodded. Then we're on the same side. The sergeant cleared his throat. Sir, the press is asking for a statement. Tell them we'll have one shortly. Hollis turned back to Adrian. You don't have to talk to them if you don't want to. I know. But if you do, I will. Because that's what this was about. Not revenge. Not even justice, really. It was about standing up. About showing that the system could work if enough people refused to let it break them. Lena checked her phone. Videos at 2 million views. The sergeant whistled softly. Adrian picked up his folder from where they'd set it on the bench. The folder that held his receipts and his photos and his proof. The folder that Judge Crane never even looked at. He tucked it under his arm and walked toward the door. Behind him, Lena and Hollis followed. The hallway was brighter than he remembered. Through the windows, he could see news vans pulling into the parking lot, reporters setting up cameras, people gathering on the courthouse steps. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, who was watching Mia. Just saw the news. Are you okay? He typed back. I'm fine. Be home soon. Another buzz. Then another. Messages from people he hadn't talked to in years. Old classmates, former colleagues, everyone wanting to know what happened. He put the phone away. At the end of the hall, there was a window that looked out over the plaza. Adrian stopped there for a moment. Lena came up beside him. You ready for this? She asked. He thought about that question, thought about everything that led him here, the years of struggle, the night staying up late with law books while Mia slept, the choice he made to give up his career so his daughter wouldn't lose both parents, the countless times he'd watched people get crushed by a system that was supposed to help them. Yeah, he said, I'm ready. They walked toward the front entrance together. Through the glass doors, Adrian could see the crowd growing, microphones, cameras, questions waiting to be asked. Somewhere in that building, Judge William Crane was probably still trying to figure out what went wrong. How a simple case about a rental dispute had turned into the end of his career. But Adrian knew. It went wrong the moment Crane decided that some people mattered less than others. The moment he forgot that justice wasn't about power. It was about principle. And principles, Adrian had learned, were worth fighting for. He pushed open the door and stepped out into the morning sun. The questions started immediately, voices overlapping, cameras flashing. But Adrian didn't flinch. He stood there, calm and quiet, and waited for the noise to die down. When it finally did, he spoke. My name is Adrian Blake. I'm a single father. I work 2 jobs. And this morning, I came to court seeking justice for a simple rental dispute. What happened instead was that I was denied my basic rights, humiliated and unlawfully detained by a judge who abused his power. He paused, letting that sink in. But I'm not the only one this has happened to. For years, Judge Crane has been treating people this way. People who couldn't fight back, people who didn't know their rights, people who thought the system wasn't meant for them. Another pause. I'm here to tell you that the system is meant for everyone. And when it fails, we have a responsibility to fix it. More questions. More cameras. But Adrian was already thinking about tomorrow, about picking Mia up from school, about finding a new apartment, maybe fixing that bathroom himself, about getting back to the quiet, normal life he'd built. A life where he was just a dad trying to do right by his kid. Nothing more, nothing less. And that, he thought, was enough. The press conference lasted 20 minutes, but it felt longer. Adrian answered questions until his throat went dry, until the same inquiries started looping back on themselves in slightly different words. A reporter from Channel 7 asked if he planned to sue. A blogger wanted to know his political affiliation. Someone from a legal podcast asked if he'd consider going back into law. He kept his answers short, factual. He wasn't there to perform. When Hollis finally stepped in and called it, Adrian felt the tension in his shoulders release just slightly. Lena walked with him to the parking lot, away from the cameras, away from the noise. "You did good back there," she said. "I just told the truth." "That's harder than you'd think, especially with that many people watching." Adrian unlocked his car, a 2009 Honda with a dent in the rear bumper and a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. Lena glanced at it but didn't comment. "What happens next?" he asked. "Hollis's team will review everything. Crane's cases, his rulings, complaints filed against him. It'll take weeks, maybe months, but with that video—" She shook her head. "He's done. Even if he fights it, he's done." "And the people he ruled against?" "Some of them might get retrials. Depends on the case." She paused. "You opened a door today, Adrian. A lot of people are going to walk through it." He thought about that. All those voices that had been silenced in Crane's courtroom. All those people who left feeling like the system wasn't built for them. "Good," he said. Lena pulled out a business card and handed it to him. "If you need anything, legal support, protection, whatever, call me. The AG's office is backing this, but things might get complicated." "Complicated how?" "Crane has friends. People who'll want to discredit you. They'll dig into your past, look for anything they can use." She met his eyes. "I'm guessing there's not much to find, but just be careful." Adrian took the card. "Thanks." She nodded and walked toward her own car, a dark sedan parked 3 spaces down. Before she got in, she turned back. "You really didn't know I'd be there today, did you?" "No." "But you went anyway." "Yeah." "Why?" Adrian thought about Mia's face that morning, about the fear in her eyes when she asked if he'd be okay, about the promise he'd made to himself after Sarah died, that he'd never teach his daughter to accept injustice just because fighting it was hard. "Because someone had to," he said. Lena smiled slightly, got in her car, and drove away. Adrian sat in his Honda for a moment before starting the engine. His phone buzzed again. More messages, more calls. He ignored them and drove home. The apartment complex where he lived was called Riverside Pines, though there was no river and only 2 scrawny pine trees in the front. It was a cluster of 2-story buildings painted beige with rusty railings and a parking lot full of potholes. His unit was on the 2nd floor, number 214 at the end of the row. He climbed the stairs and unlocked the door. Inside, his neighbor Mrs. Chen sat on the couch with Mia, watching cartoons. Mia jumped up the moment she saw him. "Dad!" She crashed into him and he caught her, lifting her up even though she was getting too big for it. She wrapped her arms around his neck and squeezed. "I saw you on TV," she said into his shoulder. "I know, kiddo. Everyone's talking about it. Mrs. Chen showed me on her phone." He set her down gently and looked at Mrs. Chen, who stood and gathered her purse. "You okay?" the older woman asked in accented English. "I'm fine." "You sure? They said you were arrested." "It was a misunderstanding. Everything's okay now." Mrs. Chen didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "Mia was very good. We did homework, had snacks." "Thank you. I really appreciate it." "Any time." She patted his arm and left, closing the door softly behind her. Mia stood in the middle of the living room, still in her school clothes, jeans and a purple hoodie with a unicorn on it. Her dark hair was pulled into a ponytail that had come half undone. She looked at him with those serious brown eyes that reminded him so much of Sarah it hurt. "Are you in trouble?" she asked. "No." The TV doesn't know everything." He sat down on the couch and she climbed up next to him. I went to court today because our landlord wasn't fixing things like he's supposed to. The judge didn't want to listen, so I made him listen, that's all. By getting arrested? I didn't plan on that part. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, Mom would have been proud of you. Adrian's chest tightened. He pulled her close. Yeah, he said quietly. Maybe. They sat like that for a while, the cartoon playing in the background, neither of them really watching it. Eventually, Mia pulled back. I'm hungry. What do you want? Mac and cheese. The good kind or the box kind? Box kind's the good kind, Dad. He smiled. All right, go wash your hands. She ran to the bathroom and he stood, stretching. His back ached from sitting in that courtroom, from the tension of the day. He walked into the kitchen, small, outdated, with linoleum that curled at the edges, and pulled a box of macaroni from the cupboard. While the water boiled, he finally checked his phone. 43 missed calls, over 100 texts, most from numbers he didn't recognize. But there were a few from people he knew. His old law school roommate, dude, just saw the news. That was insane. A former colleague from the public defender's office. You still got it, Blake. Call me if you need anything. And one from a number he didn't have saved but recognized anyway. His former boss, the head of the PD's office where he'd worked before Sarah got sick. We should talk. Seriously. He set the phone down and stirred the pasta. Mia came back, climbed onto one of the two chairs at their small table, and watched him cook. She had her iPad with her, but she didn't turn it on, just sat there swinging her legs. Dad? Yeah? Are we going to have to move? He looked at her. Why would you think that? Because of the landlord. If you're fighting with him. We're not fighting. I'm making sure he does what he's supposed to do. That's different. But what if he kicks us out? Adrian turned off the stove and drained the pasta. He can't kick us out for asking him to fix things. That's illegal. So we're staying? He scooped mac and cheese into 2 bowls and brought them to the table, sat down across from her. Yeah, kiddo, we're staying. She seemed to relax at that, picked up her fork and started eating. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Mia said, Some kids at school were mean today. Adrian's attention sharpened. What happened? They said their parents saw the news and that you were a troublemaker, that you were trying to get attention. His jaw tightened. What did you say? I told them my dad was standing up for what's right, and if they didn't like it, that was their problem. Adrian felt something swell in his chest. Pride, maybe. Or just love for this tough little kid who'd already lost so much and still had the courage to stand up for him. That's exactly right, he said. But, she hesitated. It was still hard. I know. Is it going to keep happening? He wanted to lie. Wanted to tell her everything would go back to normal tomorrow. But he'd never lied to Mia, and he wasn't going to start now. Probably for a little while, he said. People are going to talk. Some of them won't understand. Some of them won't want to. But we didn't do anything wrong. No, we didn't. But sometimes doing the right thing makes people uncomfortable. And when they're uncomfortable, they lash out. She thought about that, twirling her fork in the macaroni. I still think you did the right thing, she said finally. Thanks, kiddo. After dinner, they cleaned up together. Mia washed, Adrian dried. Then homework, math worksheets that she blazed through, and a reading assignment that took longer. By 8:30, she was in her pajamas, teeth brushed, ready for bed. Adrian tucked her in, pulling the blankets up to her chin. Her room was small, but she'd decorated it herself. Posters of bands she liked, drawings she'd done, a bulletin board covered in photos. Most of them were of her and Sarah. A few included Adrian. Dad? Mia said as he was about to turn off the light. Yeah? Are you going to be a lawyer again? The question caught him off guard. What makes you ask that? I don't know, you were so good today, on TV, talking about the law and stuff. You looked like you were supposed to be doing that. Adrian sat down on the edge of her bed. I gave that up to take care of you. I know, but I'm older now. I don't need as much taking care of. You'll always need taking care of. That's what dads do. But maybe, she struggled to find the words. Maybe you could do both? Help people and still be my dad? He brushed hair away from her forehead. Let's just see what happens, okay? One day at a time. Okay? He kissed her good night and turned off the light, leaving the door cracked open the way she liked it. Back in the living room, Adrian finally let himself sit down. Really sit down, sinking into the couch cushions, letting the weight of the day settle over him. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it. The message from his old boss was still there, unanswered. He stared at it for a long time. Then he typed, "I'll call you tomorrow." The response came back almost immediately. "Good. We have a lot to discuss." Adrian set the phone aside and leaned his head back against the couch. Through the thin walls, he could hear the couple next door arguing. The TV from the apartment above. Normal sounds, the soundtrack of life in a place like this. He thought about what Lena had said, that he'd opened a door. He thought about what Mia had said, that he looked like he was supposed to be doing this. And he thought about Sarah, about the conversation they'd had in the hospital near the end, when she was still lucid enough to talk about the future. "Promise me you'll take care of her," Sarah had said, her voice weak but steady. "I promise. But don't forget to take care of yourself too." "I will." "Adrian." She'd gripped his hand with what little strength she had left. "Don't just survive. Live. Do something that matters." He'd promised her that too. And then she was gone. And all he could do was focus on making sure Mia had food and clean clothes and didn't fall apart completely. The law had seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford, something from another life. But today it hadn't felt like a luxury. It had felt necessary. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep on the couch, but his mind wouldn't stop turning. The next morning, Adrian dropped Mia at school and drove to his first job, a warehouse where he did inventory management 3 days a week. His boss, a man named Gary, who wore the same Seahawks cap every day, met him at the entrance. "Blake, need to talk to you." Adrian followed him to the small office in the back. Gary closed the door and crossed his arms. "You're all over the news," Gary said. "Yeah. People are calling here, reporters asking about you." "I'm sorry about that." Gary studied him for a moment. "Look, I don't care about your personal business, but this is a workplace. I can't have cameras showing up, disrupting operations." Adrian's stomach dropped. "You're firing me. I'm giving you some time off, paid, until this blows over." "And if it doesn't blow over?" Gary sighed. "Let's cross that bridge when we get there." It wasn't a firing, but it was close. Adrian nodded and left. His second job was at a coffee shop, evenings and weekends. He called the manager on his way out of the warehouse parking lot. "Hey, it's Adrian. I wanted to give you a heads up." "I saw the news," the manager interrupted. "Listen, corporate called. They're worried about publicity. They're asking me to let you go." "I haven't done anything wrong." "I know, but it's out of my hands. I'm sorry." The line went dead. Adrian sat in his car in the warehouse parking lot, phone in his hand, and tried to figure out how he was going to pay rent. He drove to a coffee shop, a local place, not a chain, and sat in the corner with a cup of black coffee he couldn't really afford. Opened his laptop, the old one with the cracked screen that he'd had since law school. He pulled up his email. The inbox was flooded. Job recruiters, law firms, advocacy groups. Everyone wanted a piece of the man who'd stood up to Judge Crane. One email stood out. It was from a nonprofit called the Justice Advocacy Project. He'd heard of them. They did civil rights work, took on cases other people wouldn't touch. The subject line read, "We need to talk." He opened it. "Mr. Blake, my name is Patricia Vance. I'm the executive director of the Justice Advocacy Project. I've been following your case closely, and I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you. We're building a team to investigate judicial misconduct across the state. Your experience, both as an attorney and as someone who's been directly impacted by the system's failures, makes you uniquely qualified. I know you stepped away from law to focus on your family, and I respect that. But if you're interested in making a difference on a larger scale, I'd love to talk. No pressure, just a conversation. Best, Patricia Vance." Adrian read it twice. Then he looked around the coffee shop, a mother with a toddler in a high chair, an old man reading the newspaper, 2 college students hunched over textbooks. Normal people, living normal lives. He could go back to that, find new jobs, keep his head down, raise Mia in peace, or he could do something else. His phone rang. The number on the screen was the one from his old boss at the public defender's office. He answered, "Adrian, it's Marcus." "Hey." "I'll cut to the chase. I want you back." Adrian blinked. "What?" "The office. I want you to come back. We're swamped. We need good people, and you're one of the best I've ever had." "Marcus, I appreciate that, but I know you've got Mia. I know your situation. We can work around it. Flexible hours, remote work when possible, whatever you need." "Why now?" Marcus laughed. "Are you kidding? You just took down a sitting judge on national television. Do you know how many people are calling here asking if you work for us?" "The publicity alone." "I'm not interested in publicity." "I know. That's why I want you, because you actually give a damn about the work." Marcus paused. "Look, think about it, but don't think too long. Offers like this don't come around often." After they hung up, Adrian sat there with his coffee going cold. 2 offers in one morning, both pulling him back toward the law. He thought about what Mia had said, that he looked like he was supposed to be doing this. He thought about Sarah, about her telling him to do something that mattered. And he thought about yesterday, about standing in that courtroom, handcuffed, watching Crane's face twist with rage, and feeling, despite everything, like he was exactly where he needed to be. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Hollis wants to meet. Says it's important. Can you come to the AG's office this afternoon?" Adrian typed back, "What time?" 2 o'clock. "I'll be there." He closed his laptop and drove home. Mia wouldn't be out of school for hours, but he needed to think, needed to figure out what he was going to do. The apartment felt too quiet. He stood in the kitchen, staring at the water damage in the bathroom doorway, the reason he'd gone to court in the first place. The mold had spread since last week, black spots creeping up the drywall. He pulled out his phone and called the landlord directly. The property manager, who usually handled things, didn't pick up, so he tried the owner's number, the one listed on the lease. A man answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello? This is Adrian Blake, Unit 214 at Riverside Pines." Silence. "I'm calling about the water damage in my bathroom. It's been 3 months and—" "I know who you are," the man said. His voice was cold. "I saw the news." "That has nothing to do with—" "You want to know why I haven't fixed your bathroom? Because tenants like you are more trouble than they're worth. You think you can go on TV, make me look bad, and I'll just roll over?" Adrian's grip tightened on the phone. "I never mentioned you or this building." "Doesn't matter. You've made yourself a target, and anyone associated with you becomes a target too. So you're retaliating. I'm protecting my property. By letting it rot?" The landlord laughed, humorless. "Good luck finding another place to live, Mr. Blake, because once this story gets around, no one's going to rent to you." The line went dead. Adrian stood there, phone in hand, and felt the walls closing in. He'd known there would be consequences, but knowing it and feeling it were 2 different things. He sat down at the kitchen table and put his head in his hands. A knock at the door pulled him out of it. He stood, confused. He wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, he saw Lena. He opened the door. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Can I come in?" He stepped aside and she entered, glancing around the small apartment. Her eyes lingered on the water damage. "So this is what started it," she said. "Yeah." She turned to face him. "Hollis moved up the meeting. He wants to see you now." "Why?" "Crane's lawyers filed a motion this morning. They're claiming the video was obtained illegally, that you and I orchestrated the whole thing to entrap him." Adrian felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Can they prove that?" "No, because it's not true, but they're going to try." She paused. "Hollis wants to get ahead of it. He needs your statement on record, officially." "I'll tell him the same thing I told the press." "I know, but it needs to be documented. And Adrian," she hesitated, "they're going to come after you, Crane's people. They'll look for anything, unpaid parking tickets, tax issues, anything they can spin." "Let them look." "I'm serious. These people play dirty." "So do I when I have to." Lena studied him. "You're not scared." "I'm terrified, but I'm also tired of letting fear make my decisions." She nodded slowly. "Okay, let's go." They drove to the Attorney General's office in her car. The building was downtown, glass and steel, with security checkpoints and ID badges required to get past the lobby. Hollis met them on the 7th floor. His office was exactly what Adrian expected, Diplomas on the wall, case files stacked on the desk, a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Mr. Blake," Hollis said, shaking his hand. "Thanks for coming on short notice." "Lena said it was important." "It is. Sit." They sat. Hollis pulled out a legal pad and a recorder. "I need to take your statement. Everything that happened yesterday, from the moment you entered the courthouse to the moment you left. I need details, times, conversations, everything." Adrian talked for an hour. Hollis asked questions, took notes, occasionally stopped the recorder to clarify something. Lena sat quietly, listening. When they finished, Hollis leaned back in his chair. "Crane's team is going to argue that you're a disgruntled former attorney with a grudge against the system, that you manipulated the situation to make him look bad." "I didn't manipulate anything. I presented a case. He chose how to respond." "I know, but we need to be prepared for their narrative." Hollis glanced at Lena, then back at Adrian. "There's something else. We've received complaints about Crane from 17 other plaintiffs. People who went through his courtroom in the past year alone. Some of their stories are—" He shook his head. "Worse than yours." Adrian felt his chest tighten. "How much worse?" "Wrongful convictions, excessive sentences, bias so blatant it's hard to believe no one caught it sooner." Hollis paused. "You opened the floodgates, Adrian. People are coming forward because they saw what you did. They think maybe someone will finally listen." "Will you?" "Yes. But it's going to take time and resources, and people willing to fight." Hollis leaned forward. "Which brings me to why I really asked you here. I want to offer you a position, temporary consultant with the AG's office. You'd work with our team reviewing Crane's cases, identifying victims, building the larger case against him." Adrian stared at him. "I'm not licensed to practice anymore." "You don't need to be. This isn't about representing clients. It's about investigation, analysis. You know the law, you understand how these systems work, and you've experienced firsthand what it's like to be on the wrong end of judicial abuse." Hollis paused. "Plus, frankly, your face is all over the news. Victims trust you. They'll talk to you." "I have a daughter. I can't just—" "We'll work around your schedule. Pay's not great, but it's steady. And it's a chance to actually fix what's broken." Adrian looked at Lena. She gave him a small nod. He thought about Mia's question last night, about whether he could do both. "How long?" he asked. 6 months initially. Could extend depending on what we find." "And after that?" Hollis shrugged. "That's up to you. But I have a feeling once you're back in, you won't want to leave." Adrian didn't answer right away. He looked out the window at the city below. All those buildings. All those people living their lives, most of them never thinking about the systems that governed them until those systems failed. "I need to think about it," he said. "Fair enough, but I need an answer by Monday." They shook hands again, and Adrian left with Lena. In the elevator, she said, "You're going to take it." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do, because you're not someone who walks away when there's work to be done." The elevator doors opened, and they walked out into the late afternoon sun. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. "Picked up Mia from school. She's at my place. Some reporters were hanging around the building. Thought it was safer." He cursed under his breath. "What's wrong?" Lena asked. "Press found my apartment. I'll drive you." They got to Riverside Pines 20 minutes later. Sure enough, a news van was parked in the lot. A reporter and cameraman stood near the stairs leading to Adrian's unit. "Want me to handle them?" Lena asked. "No, I will." He got out of the car and walked toward them. The reporter spotted him and immediately started talking. "Mr. Blake, do you have a comment on Judge Crane's legal team's allegations that—" "No comment. But they're saying you entrapped him, that this was all planned." Adrian stopped walking and turned to face them. "I went to court to resolve a rental dispute. That's all. What happened after that was Judge Crane's choice, not mine. Now please leave. This is private property." "Just a few more questions." I said no. The cameraman kept filming. Adrian walked past them, climbed the stairs, and knocked on Mrs. Chen's door. She opened it immediately. Mia was inside, sitting on the couch, looking worried. "Dad!" "Hey, kiddo, ready to go home?" She grabbed her backpack and they left. Mrs. Chen gave the reporters a withering look as they passed. Back in the apartment, Adrian locked the door and closed the blinds. Are they going to keep coming? Mia asked. For a while, yeah. I don't like it. I know, me neither. She sat down on the couch, quieter than usual. Adrian sat next to her. Talk to me, he said. Kids at school keep asking me questions. About you. About what happened. I don't know what to say. Tell them the truth. That your dad stood up for himself and now some people are mad about it. But what if they don't believe me? Then that's their problem, not yours. She leaned against him and he put his arm around her shoulders. It's going to get harder before it gets easier, he said quietly. I won't lie to you about that, but we'll get through it. Promise? Promise. They ordered pizza for dinner because neither of them felt like cooking. Ate it in front of the TV, watching a movie Mia picked. Something animated with talking animals. Adrian barely paid attention. His mind was on Hollis's offer, on the 17 other victims, on the choice in front of him. After Mia went to bed, he pulled out his laptop again, opened Patricia Vance's email, read it one more time. Then he started typing a response. Ms. Vance, thank you for reaching out. I'm interested in learning more. When can we talk? Adrian Blake. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he opened a new email, addressed it to Marcus at the public defender's office. I need a few days to think about your offer, but I appreciate you reaching out. I'll be in touch soon. Adrian. Two possibilities. Two paths forward. Or maybe they weren't separate paths at all. His phone buzzed. Patricia Vance had already responded. Tomorrow morning? 9 a.m.? I can come to you, he typed back. There's a coffee shop on 4th Street. Brew Point. I'll meet you there. See you then. Adrian closed the laptop and sat in the quiet apartment. Outside he could hear the city. Cars passing. Distant sirens, the hum of life continuing all around him. Tomorrow, he'd meet with Patricia. On Monday, he'd give Hollis an answer. And somewhere in between, he'd figure out how to keep his daughter safe while dismantling the system that had tried to break him. It wasn't going to be easy. But then again, nothing worth doing ever was. Adrian woke up at 6, an hour before his alarm. Sleep had come in fragments, interrupted by the sound of his own thoughts circling. He lay there in the dark, listening to the radiator clank and the upstairs neighbor's footsteps, then gave up and got out of bed. The coffee maker gurgled while he showered. By the time Mia stumbled into the kitchen in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, he had scrambled eggs waiting and her lunch already packed. You're up early, she mumbled. Couldn't sleep. Because of the meeting. He'd told her about it last night. Not all the details, but enough. She was smart enough to know when he was holding back, and he tried not to insult her with obvious lies. Yeah, he said. Because of the meeting. She sat down and poked at her eggs. What if they want you to do something dangerous? It's just talking, kiddo. Nothing dangerous about talking. But what if, eat your breakfast, you'll miss the bus? She ate, but slowly, and kept glancing at him like she was trying to solve a problem she couldn't quite name. When the bus came, she hugged him tighter than usual before leaving. Be careful, she said. Always am. Dad, I mean it. He crouched down to her level. I know you do, and I promise I'm not going to do anything stupid. That's not the same as being careful. She had him there. He kissed her forehead and watched her run to the bus stop, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. The drive to Brew Point took 15 minutes. Adrian got there 20 minutes early and ordered black coffee from a barista with green hair and a nose ring who didn't seem to recognize him. Small mercies. He took a table in the back corner where he could see the door. Patricia Vance arrived at exactly 9. Adrian knew it was her before she even approached. Mid-50s, gray suit, leather bag over one shoulder, the kind of purposeful stride that came from spending years in courtrooms and boardrooms. She spotted him immediately and walked over. Mr. Blake? Ms. Vance? They shook hands. Her grip was firm. She sat down across from him, setting her bag on the floor. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I know your time is limited. I've got until 3. That's when Mia gets home. Patricia nodded. Your daughter, 7, right? You did your homework. I always do. She pulled out a tablet and a legal pad, the kind lawyers still used because some habits died hard. Let me start by telling you what we do. The Justice Advocacy Project focuses on systemic failures in the legal system. We represent people who've been failed by public defenders, wrongly convicted, or subjected to judicial misconduct. We also investigate and expose patterns of abuse. I've heard of you, Adrian said. The Riverside case. The prosecutor who was withholding evidence. That was us. Took 3 years, but we got 12 convictions overturned. She paused. What happened to you with Judge Crane? That's exactly the kind of thing we exist to fight. And frankly, we need people like you. People like me. People who understand the system from both sides, who've practiced law and been victimized by it. Who can talk to someone who's been railroaded and actually understand what they're going through? Adrian drank his coffee. It was too hot and burned his tongue slightly. You want me to what exactly? Join your team? In a capacity that works for you. We're flexible. Some of our people work full-time, some consult on specific cases. What matters is the work, not the hours. The Attorney General's office made me an offer too. Patricia didn't look surprised. I heard. Hollis is good at what he does, but he's still part of the system. We're outside it. That gives us freedom they don't have. It also means you don't have their resources. True. But we have something better. We have the trust of the communities that system has failed. She leaned forward slightly. Hollis can investigate Crane's cases. He can build a prosecution. But when this is over, the AG's office moves on to the next crisis. We stay. We keep fighting. Adrian considered that. What would you need from me? Help us document what Crane did. Interview victims, review case files, identify patterns. And beyond Crane, we're building a database of judicial misconduct across the state. Your insight would be invaluable. I'm not licensed anymore. Don't need you to be. This isn't about practicing law, it's about exposing the truth. She paused. We can pay you. Not a lot, but enough. And we work around family obligations. I have 3 kids myself. I get it. A couple at the next table laughed at something on a phone screen. Normal people having a normal morning. Adrian wondered what that felt like. Can I be honest with you? He asked. Please. I walked away from law because it was destroying me. The work, the hours, the weight of knowing I couldn't save everyone. When my wife got sick, it was almost a relief to have an excuse to quit. And after she died, he stopped, gathering his thoughts. I told myself I was done, that I'd focus on being a dad and nothing else would matter. But something changed. Yeah, I went to that courtroom and saw the same system that broke me breaking someone else, and I couldn't just walk away. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, My oldest son is autistic, high-functioning, but the school system didn't know what to do with him. They wanted to stick him in a special ed program that would have been completely wrong for him. I fought them for 2 years. Filed complaints, hired lawyers. Went to hearing after hearing. She smiled slightly. That's actually what got me into advocacy work. I realized the system doesn't fail by accident. It fails because it's designed to make fighting back as hard as possible. So people give up. But you didn't. Neither did you. They sat there for a moment, 2 people who'd learned the same hard lesson from different angles. I need to think about it, Adrian said finally. Of course, take the time you need. But Adrian, and I hope you don't mind me calling you that, whatever you decide, don't let fear make the choice for you. Fear of disrupting your life, fear of failing, fear of what it might cost. Those are the things that keep good people from doing necessary work. She pulled a business card from her bag and slid it across the table. Same information as the email, but something about the physical card made it feel more real. Call me when you're ready, she said. She left a few minutes later. Adrian sat alone with his coffee, now cold, and stared at the card. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Detective Sarah Grimes with Metro PD. We need to speak with you regarding Judge Crane. Please call at your earliest convenience. A phone number followed. Adrian stared at it. Then another text came through, this time from Lena. Heads up. Crane's people are filing a complaint against you with the state bar, claiming you practiced law without a license by representing yourself. It's bullshit, but you should know. He typed back. I'm not licensed. They can't discipline me. They're trying to build a narrative. Just be prepared. Adrian paid for his coffee and walked out into the morning. It was one of those October days that couldn't decide what season it wanted to be. Cold in the shade, warm in the sun, the air smelling like dead leaves and exhaust fumes. He called Detective Grimes from his car. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Blake, thanks for calling back. What's this about?" "We're conducting an investigation into Judge Crane's conduct. Your incident is part of it, but there are other complaints. I need to get your statement on record." "I already gave a statement to the Attorney General's office." "I understand, but this is a separate criminal investigation, different jurisdiction." She paused. "I can come to you if that's easier, or we can meet at the station." Not the station. There's a park near my apartment, Riverside Park. I can meet you there in an hour." "I'll be there." Adrian drove home and changed into jeans and a hoodie, something that didn't look like he was trying too hard. Then he walked the 3 blocks to Riverside Park, which wasn't really a park so much as a patch of grass with some benches and a broken fountain that hadn't worked in years. Detective Grimes was already there, sitting on one of the benches. She was younger than he expected, maybe mid-30s, with her hair pulled back and a jacket that didn't quite hide the badge on her belt. "Mr. Blake?" she said, standing. "Detective." They shook hands and sat down. She pulled out a recorder, same as Hollis had. "I'm going to record this if that's okay with you." "Fine." She pressed record and stated the date, time, and location. Then she looked at him. "Tell me what happened in Judge Crane's courtroom." Adrian went through it again. Third time telling the story, and it was starting to feel rehearsed, even though he was just stating facts. Grimes asked questions, good ones, the kind that showed she knew what she was looking for. "Did you know Ms. Carter before that day?" she asked. "No." "Never met her? Never communicated with her?" "Never." "And you didn't plan to provoke Judge Crane?" Adrian met her eyes. "I planned to present my case. I didn't plan for him to lose his mind." "But you knew he had a reputation." "I'd heard things, but hearing and experiencing are different." Grimes made a note. "We've pulled his records. 243 cases in the past 18 months alone. And that's just civil court. The patterns are—" She shook her head. "Let's just say your case isn't unique." "How many complaints?" "Before your incident, 7 formal ones. Dozens of informal ones that went nowhere. After your incident, 63 and counting." Adrian felt something cold in his chest. 63 people who'd been through what he had. 63 people who'd stayed silent until someone else went first. "What happens now?" he asked. "We build a case. Criminal charges for abuse of power, potentially civil rights violations. It'll take time, but with the video evidence and the testimony we're gathering—" She paused. "This is going to be big, Mr. Blake. National news big. You understand that?" "I'm already national news." "This will be different. Crane's lawyers are going to come after you hard. They'll try to discredit you, dig up everything they can from your past, paint you as someone with an agenda. Let them dig. They won't find anything. Everyone has something." "Not everyone." Grimes studied him. "You really believe that?" "I've spent the last 3 years working 2 jobs and raising a kid alone. My life is an open book because there's nothing in it except work and being a parent. They want to paint me as some kind of mastermind? Good luck." She smiled slightly. "I like you, Mr. Blake, but I need you to be careful. These people play dirty." "So I've heard." They talked for another 20 minutes. When they finished, Grimes turned off the recorder and stood. "One more thing," she said. "Off the record." "Okay." "I've been a cop for 12 years. I've seen a lot of bad people do a lot of bad things. But the ones who scare me most aren't the obvious criminals. They're the ones who have power and think it makes them untouchable." She paused. "Judge Crane is one of those people. And when people like that get cornered, they get dangerous. Watch your back." "I will." "I mean it. Get cameras for your apartment. Vary your routine. Keep your daughter close." The way she said it made Adrian's skin prickle. "You think he'd actually try something?" "I think desperate people do desperate things, and right now Crane is very desperate." She left. Adrian sat on the bench alone, watching a couple of kids play on the rusty swing set across the grass. Their mother sat nearby, scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing up to make sure they were still there. He thought about what Grimes said, about being careful, about keeping Mia close. His phone rang. He didn't recognize the number but answered anyway. "Is this Adrian Blake?" A man's voice, professional but strained. Who's asking? My name is Robert Chen. I saw you on the news about Judge Crane. Adrian's grip tightened on the phone. Okay. I had a case in front of him. 2 years ago, custody hearing. My ex-wife and I were fighting over our daughter. His voice cracked slightly. Crane didn't even look at the evidence, just listened to her lawyer, this expensive guy in a suit, and gave her full custody. Didn't matter that I had a stable job, a good home. Didn't matter that she'd been arrested twice for DUI with our kid in the car. Adrian closed his eyes. I'm sorry. I tried to appeal, couldn't afford a lawyer, tried to do it myself, got denied. And now I see my daughter every other weekend if I'm lucky, and there's nothing I can do about it. He paused. When I saw what you did, I thought maybe someone would finally listen. They're investigating. Detective Grimes with Metro PD. Call her. Tell her your story. Will it matter? I don't know, but it's a start. Robert was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you for standing up, for showing people it's possible. I didn't do anything special. Yeah, you did. You didn't back down. After they hung up, Adrian sat there with the phone in his hand. The kids on the swings were laughing. Their mother had put her phone away and was pushing them, smiling. Normal life. Simple moments, the things Adrian wanted for Mia. But to get those things, someone had to fight for them. He called Hollis. Adrian, Hollis answered. Good timing. I was just about to call you. I'll take the job. The consultant position. That's excellent news. When can you start? Monday, but I need flexible hours, and I need to keep my daughter's schedule sacred. 3 o'clock, I'm done. No exceptions. Done. We'll draw up the paperwork. Hollis paused. You won't regret this. I already regret it, but I'm doing it anyway. Hollis laughed. That's the spirit. Next, Adrian called Patricia Vance. Patricia, it's Adrian Blake. That was fast. I'm taking Hollis's offer with the AG, but I want to help you too, whatever capacity makes sense. We can make that work. The cases don't always overlap, and when they do, we'll coordinate. Good. Welcome to the fight, Adrian. I've been in the fight, now I'm just making it official. He hung up and sat there on the bench, feeling the weight of what he'd just committed to. 2 jobs that didn't pay much, hours that would stretch him thin, a target on his back that was only going to get bigger, but also a chance to actually fix something, to take the broken pieces of the system and hammer them into something better. His phone buzzed, another unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Blake? A woman's voice, older, trembling slightly. Yes. My name is Margaret Foster. I'm calling because I need to tell someone what Judge Crane did to my son. Adrian pulled out a pen and the back of a receipt from his pocket. I'm listening. She talked for 40 minutes. Her son had been arrested for possession, a small amount, first offense. Public defender advised him to take a plea deal. Crane gave him the maximum sentence anyway. 3 years in state prison. The kid was 19. He's different now, Margaret said, her voice breaking. He was a good boy. Made a mistake, but he was good. And that place, what they did to him there. I'm sorry, Adrian said quietly. I'm so sorry. Can you help him? I don't know, but I can try. He took down her information, promised to pass it along to Hollis and Patricia, told her about Detective Grimes. When she hung up, Adrian sat there with 4 pages of notes on the backs of receipts and napkins. 4 pages of one woman's pain, one family destroyed by a system that was supposed to deliver justice. The sun was past its peak now, shadows stretching across the grass. Adrian checked the time. 1:30. Mia would be home in 90 minutes. He walked back to the apartment. The news van was gone, which was something. Inside, he made himself a sandwich he didn't really want and tried to prepare for the conversation he'd have to have with Mia tonight, about how things were going to change, about how he'd be working more but differently, about how they'd have to be more careful now, about how fighting for what's right doesn't always feel good, but you do it anyway. She came home at 3:15, dropped off by Mrs. Chen, who gave Adrian a meaningful look he couldn't quite read. How was school? He asked. Fine. She went to her room and closed the door. Not slammed, just closed, which was somehow worse. Adrian knocked a few minutes later. Can I come in? It's your apartment. He opened the door. She was sitting on her bed, still in her school clothes, staring at her hands. Want to talk about it? He asked. Not really. He sat down next to her, waited. Finally, she said, Mrs. Patterson pulled me aside today. The guidance counselor. She asked if things were okay at home. Adrian felt his jaw tighten. What did you tell her? I said they were fine, but she kept pushing, like she thought you were, I don't know, doing something wrong. I'm not doing anything wrong. I know that, but she doesn't. None of them do. They just see the news and make up stories. She looked at him, eyes wet. I hate it. I know. So why are you doing it? Why can't you just let it go? Adrian took a breath. This was the conversation he'd been dreading. Because if I let it go, nothing changes. Judge Crane keeps doing what he's been doing. Other people keep getting hurt. And one day you'll be old enough to see how broken things are, and you'll ask me why I didn't do something when I had the chance. But what about us? What about our life? This is our life now. And I know it's not what you wanted. It's not what I wanted either. But sometimes you don't get to choose. You just have to deal with what's in front of you. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Mom would know what to do. Yeah, she would. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mia said, What did Mom say? When she was sick? About all this stuff? Adrian thought back to those final weeks. To Sarah in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors everywhere, still somehow managing to worry about everyone but herself. She said that life's too short to spend it being afraid. That if you have a chance to make things better, even a little bit, you take it. He paused. She also said that being a good parent doesn't mean protecting your kids from everything. It means teaching them how to face things. Is that what you're doing? Teaching me? I'm trying. Mia leaned against him. He put his arm around her shoulders. I don't want to learn this way, she said quietly. I know, but you're tougher than you think. I don't feel tough. Nobody does. That's the secret. Everyone's scared. The difference is some people keep going anyway. She didn't say anything else, but she didn't pull away either. They sat there until the light outside started to change, golden afternoon turning to dusk. Eventually, Mia got up to do her homework. Adrian made dinner, spaghetti, nothing fancy, and they ate while watching a baking show neither of them really cared about, just noise to fill the space. After Mia went to bed, Adrian's phone rang again. This time it was Lena. Turn on channel 4, she said. Why? Just do it. He found the remote and switched to the news. The anchor was in the middle of a segment about Judge Crane. On the screen behind her, a photo of Crane in his robes, looking stern and authoritative. New developments in the scandal involving Judge William Crane. Sources tell us that a formal ethics complaint has been filed and criminal charges may be forthcoming, but Crane's legal team is fighting back, claiming the entire incident was a setup orchestrated by disgraced attorney Adrian Blake. They cut to footage of a press conference. Crane's lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, standing behind a podium. My client is the victim here, the lawyer said. Mr. Blake, who has a history of antagonistic behavior and professional failures, deliberately provoked Judge Crane in an attempt to manufacture a viral moment. This was never about justice. It was about attention and revenge. The anchor came back on screen. Blake, who lost his law license after abandoning his clients 3 years ago. Adrian turned off the TV. You still there? Lena asked. Yeah. It started. I know. They're going to say worse. You need to be ready. I am ready. Adrian, I said I'm ready. He took a breath. They can say whatever they want. It doesn't change what happened. Public opinion matters. Not as much as the truth. Lena was quiet for a moment, then, Hollis wants to hold a press conference. Let you respond. No. Adrian, I said what I needed to say. I'm not going to get into a media war with Crane's lawyers. That's what they want. They want me distracted, reactive, defending myself instead of focusing on the work. So what are you going to do? My job. Starting Monday. After they hung up, Adrian sat in the dark living room and thought about what he'd just heard. Disgraced attorney. Professional failures. History of antagonistic behavior. None of it was true. But it didn't matter. Because once something was on TV, once it was out there in the world, truth became negotiable. He thought about calling his old colleagues, his law school friends, the people who knew him and could vouch for him. But what would that accomplish? Their words against a lawyer's spin machine? No. Lena was right about one thing. Public opinion mattered, but not the way she thought. The public would believe what they wanted to believe. Some would see him as a hero. Some would see him as a troublemaker. Most wouldn't care at all. What mattered was the work, the cases, the people like Robert Chen and Margaret Foster who needed someone to listen. His phone buzzed, a text from Patricia Vance. Saw the news. You okay? Fine. Remember, we've dealt with worse. This is just noise. I know. Good. See you next week. Adrian set the phone down and went to check on Mia one more time before bed. She was asleep, curled up with the stuffed bear Sarah had given her years ago. Peaceful, for now. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe. Tomorrow, he'd wake up to more headlines. More accusations, more people with opinions about a situation they didn't understand. But tonight, his daughter was safe. Warm. Dreaming about whatever 7-year-olds dreamed about. And that, Adrian decided, was enough to keep going. He closed her door softly and went to his own room. Lay down in the dark. Stared at the ceiling. Somewhere across town, Judge Crane was probably doing the same thing. Lying awake, realizing his entire world had collapsed because he couldn't control his temper for 5 minutes. Adrian didn't feel sorry for him, but he didn't feel triumphant either. He just felt tired and ready for Monday. Monday morning came gray and cold, the kind of October weather that promised rain but never delivered. Adrian dropped Mia at school early. She'd asked him to, said she didn't want to deal with the other kids staring, and drove downtown to the Attorney General's office. The building looked different now that he was walking in as an employee instead of a witness. Security waved him through after checking his temporary ID badge. Hollis met him on the 7th floor, along with 2 other people Adrian hadn't seen before. Adrian, this is Carmen Rodriguez and James Okoye. They're heading up the Crane investigation. You'll be working directly with them. Carmen was late 40s, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, wearing a pantsuit that looked like it had survived a few courtroom battles. James was younger, maybe early 30s, tall and lean, with the careful posture of someone who'd learned to take up less space than he deserved. They shook hands. Carmen's grip was brief and firm. James held on a second longer, like he was trying to read something in Adrian's face. We've got a lot to cover, Carmen said. Conference room's this way. The conference room was all glass walls and whiteboards covered in notes. File boxes were stacked against one wall. A laptop sat open on the table, screen showing what looked like a spreadsheet with hundreds of rows. This is what we're dealing with, Carmen said, gesturing at the boxes. 243 cases from the past 18 months. That's just civil court. We're still pulling his criminal docket. Adrian looked at the boxes. Each one represented dozens of people whose lives had intersected with Crane's courtroom. Dozens of moments where justice either happened or didn't. Where do we start? He asked. James pulled out a chair and sat. We've been categorizing by case type and outcome, looking for patterns. Dismissals without cause, excessive rulings, procedural violations. Your job is to help us identify which cases warrant further investigation and which victims we should prioritize for interviews. You've got legal experience and you've been on the receiving end, Carmen added. That combination is rare. You'll see things we might miss. Hollis checked his watch. I've got a meeting. Carmen, James, get him set up. Adrian, my door's open if you need anything. He left. Carmen pulled the first box off the stack and set it on the table. Let's start with evictions, she said. Crane handled a lot of landlord-tenant disputes. The pattern there is pretty clear. They worked for 3 hours straight. Adrian read case files, made notes, flagged anything that looked wrong. Some cases were obvious. Tenants denied the right to present evidence, evictions ordered without proper notice, landlords allowed to violate lease terms without consequence. Others were subtler, a dismissal here, a fine there, small injustices that added up. At 11:30, James stood and stretched. Coffee break. You want anything? Black coffee, thanks. When James left, Carmen leaned back in her chair and studied Adrian. You're handling this better than I expected, she said. What were you expecting? I don't know. More emotion. Most people who've been through what you went through, they come in angry, wanting revenge. I'm angry. I'm just not loud about it. Good. Loud doesn't help. She paused. How's your daughter handling all this? She's 7. She shouldn't have to handle it at all. But she is. Yeah, she is. Adrian set down the file he'd been reading. Kids are tougher than people think. She'll be okay. Will you? The question caught him off guard. He looked at Carmen, really looked at her, and saw something in her expression that suggested she already knew the answer. I don't know yet, he said honestly. Fair enough. James came back with coffee and paper cups. They kept working. Around 1 o'clock, Adrian's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You don't know what you're doing. Walk away while you still can. He stared at it for a moment, then showed it to Carmen. She read it, jaw tightening. Screenshot that and forward it to Detective Grimes. We'll trace the number. It's probably a burner. Probably, but we document everything. She looked at him seriously. This is going to get worse before it gets better. You need to be prepared for that. Everyone keeps telling me that. Because it's true. Crane has connections, people who owe him favors, and they're scared that if he goes down, they might go with him. Adrian thought about the landlord who'd refused to fix his bathroom, about the way the man's voice had changed when he realized who Adrian was. Fear masquerading as anger. Let them be scared, Adrian said. They broke for lunch at 2. Adrian had brought a sandwich from home, but Carmen insisted on buying him something from the deli across the street. They sat in the small break room, Carmen with a salad, James with a wrap that was mostly falling apart. Can I ask you something? James said. Why'd you really go to Crane's courtroom that day? I told you, rental dispute. Yeah, but you knew his reputation. You knew what kind of judge he was, so why go? Adrian ate his sandwich, turkey and cheese, nothing special, and thought about how to answer that. Because I was tired of being afraid, he said finally. Tired of letting people like him get away with it because it was easier than fighting, and I figured, worst case, I lose. Same result as not showing up. Except you didn't lose. No. But I didn't win either, not the way I wanted to. Carmen raised an eyebrow. You took down a corrupt judge. That's not winning? I wanted my bathroom fixed. Instead, I got national attention and death threats. Not exactly the outcome I was hoping for. James laughed despite himself. Fair point. They finished eating and went back to work. By 2:30, Adrian had reviewed 47 cases, flagged 19 for follow-up, made notes on 12 others that showed clear patterns of bias. His phone rang. The school. Mr. Blake, this is Vice Principal Henderson. Adrian's stomach dropped. Is Mia okay? She's fine, but there was an incident. Can you come pick her up? What kind of incident? I'd rather discuss it in person. Adrian grabbed his jacket. I'm on my way. Carmen looked up from her files. Everything okay? School called. I have to go. Take the rest of the day. We'll catch up tomorrow. The drive to Mia's school took 12 minutes in traffic that felt like molasses. Adrian's mind spun through possibilities, each worse than the last. By the time he pulled into the parking lot, his hands were shaking slightly. Henderson met him in the main office. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair cut short and the patient expression of someone who dealt with 1,000 different crises and survived them all. Mr. Blake, thank you for coming. Where's Mia? She's in the counselor's office. She's not in trouble. I want to be clear about that. Then what happened? Henderson gestured for him to follow her down the hallway. There was an altercation during lunch. Another student said some things about you, about the news coverage, and Mia responded physically. Adrian stopped walking. She hit someone? She pushed him, hard enough that he fell and scraped his knee. The other boy's parents are here. They reached the counselor's office. Through the window, Adrian could see Mia sitting in a chair, arms crossed, face red and streaked with tears. Mrs. Patterson, the counselor, sat next to her. Across from them were a boy about Mia's age with a bandaged knee and 2 adults who looked like they'd dressed for battle. Adrian took a breath and walked in. The boy's father stood immediately. You're Blake. I am. Your daughter attacked my son. I heard she pushed him. She's violent, just like her father, apparently. Causing trouble, getting in fights. Mr. Brennan, Henderson interrupted firmly. Let's keep this civil. Adrian looked at Mia. She wouldn't meet his eyes. What did your son say to her? Adrian asked quietly. Mrs. Brennan spoke up. That's irrelevant. No, it's not. Kids don't push other kids for no reason. The boy, who'd been silent until now, mumbled something. Speak up, Tyler, his father said. I said her dad was a liar, that he made up stuff about the judge to get famous. Mia's head snapped up. You said my dad was a criminal. Tyler, Mrs. Brennan said sharply, we talked about this. But that's what you said. You said he was probably going to jail and that we should stay away from Mia because… Enough, Mr. Brennan cut him off. He looked at Henderson. I want her suspended. This kind of behavior is unacceptable. Henderson's expression didn't change. Both children violated our conflict resolution policy. They'll both receive appropriate consequences. Appropriate? She assaulted him. She pushed him, and while that's not acceptable, it happened after he verbally harassed her about her family. Both actions have consequences. Adrian crouched down next to Mia's chair. Hey, look at me. She did, reluctantly. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Did you push Tyler? He asked. Yes. Why? Because he said you were bad, and I got mad. I understand why you got mad, but we don't put our hands on people, not even when they say things that hurt. But I know, and what he said was wrong, but pushing him didn't make it right. She looked down at her hands. I'm sorry. Tell Tyler, not me. Mia turned to the boy. I'm sorry I pushed you. Tyler mumbled something that might have been an acceptance. His parents looked less than satisfied. Henderson cleared her throat. Tyler, you owe Mia an apology as well. Mr. Brennan started to object, but Henderson gave him a look that could have frozen water. Tyler, to his credit, seemed to understand better than his parents. I'm sorry I said that stuff about your dad. Both students will have in-school suspension tomorrow, Henderson said. 1 day each, and I strongly recommend that all adults involved consider how our words and actions impact our children. She looked directly at the Brennans when she said it. They left in a huff, Tyler trailing behind them. When they were gone, Henderson turned to Adrian. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Not your fault. Actually, it is. We should have been more proactive about addressing the attention your situation has brought to the school. Kids hear what their parents say, and sometimes they repeat it without understanding the harm. Adrian stood. What happens now? Mia serves her suspension tomorrow. You'll need to keep her home. After that, we move forward. But Mr. Blake… She paused. If this continues to be an issue, we may need to discuss other options. Like what? Temporary homeschooling, or transferring to another school where she might have a fresh start. The words hit Adrian like a punch. You're kicking her out. I'm not. I'm being realistic about what's sustainable. Mia is a good student and a good kid, but if the environment here becomes toxic for her, we need to consider her well-being. Adrian didn't trust himself to respond. He just nodded and helped Mia gather her things. They walked to the car in silence. Mia got in the passenger seat, buckled her seatbelt, stared straight ahead. Adrian started the engine, but didn't drive yet. You know you can't do that again, right? He said. I know. When people say things that hurt, you walk away. You tell a teacher. You don't push. I know. Her voice was small. But Dad, they were lying about you. I know they were, so why can't I fight back? Because fighting back that way just proves them right. They want to say we're troublemakers? Fine, but we don't give them ammunition. Mia was quiet for a long moment. Then, it's not fair. No, it's not. So what are we supposed to do? Adrian gripped the steering wheel. Good question. What were they supposed to do? Accept the harassment? Move schools? Uproot their lives because other people couldn't handle the truth? We do what we've been doing, he said finally. We keep going, we keep our heads up, and we don't let them make us smaller than we are. I don't feel very big right now. Me neither, kiddo. Me neither. They drove home. Inside the apartment, Mia went straight to her room. Adrian heard the door close, heard her crying on the other side. He wanted to go to her, wanted to fix this. But sometimes kids needed space to feel their feelings, and sometimes dads needed to respect that. He sat on the couch and pulled out his phone, stared at the threatening text from earlier, screenshot it, like Carmen said, sent it to Detective Grimes with a brief explanation. Then he opened his contacts and called a number he hadn't used in 3 years. A woman answered. Madison and Associates. This is Adrian Blake. I need to speak with Julia Madison. Does she know what this is regarding? She'll know. A pause, then hold music. 2 minutes later, a familiar voice came on the line. Adrian, is that really you? Hey, Jules. I saw the news. Everyone did. Are you okay? Julia Madison had been Sarah's best friend. They'd met in college, stayed close through everything, marriages, careers, Sarah's illness. After Sarah died, Julia had tried to stay in touch, but Adrian had pulled away from everyone. Easier than explaining why he couldn't handle their sympathy. I'm managing, he said. Listen, I need a favor. Anything. Mia got in trouble at school today. Some kid said things about me, she pushed him, now she's suspended, and they're talking about transferring her. I need advice. What kind of advice? The legal kind. Parent versus school district kind. Julia was quiet for a moment. You thinking of filing something? I'm thinking of understanding my options. They're basically punishing her for my choices. Okay. First thing, don't do anything rash. Schools have wide discretion when it comes to discipline, but they also have to follow due process. Did they give you any documentation? Just verbal? Get it in writing, everything. The incident report, the suspension notice, any communication about potential transfers. You want a paper trail, all right? And Adrian, be careful. I know you're in fight mode right now, but picking a war with your daughter's school while you're already dealing with the judge situation. She trailed off. Just think it through. I will. How is Mia? Really? Scared, angry, confused, all the things a 7-year-old shouldn't have to feel. Kids are resilient. Everyone keeps saying that, like it's supposed to make it okay. Julia sighed. I miss Sarah too. She'd know exactly what to say right now. Yeah, she would. They talked for a few more minutes. Julia promised to send him some resources about parental rights and school discipline. After they hung up, Adrian sat in the quiet apartment and thought about Sarah. She'd been good at this. The balancing act, the knowing when to push and when to pull back, when to fight and when to accept. Adrian was learning, but it was like trying to play an instrument he'd never touched before. Every note felt wrong. His phone rang again. Detective Grimes. Mr. Blake, I got your text. Have you received any other threats? Not yet. We're tracing the number, but I'm going to be honest. It's probably a dead end. These people know how to cover their tracks. She paused. I'm more concerned about the escalation pattern. First media attacks, now direct threats. Next step is usually something physical. Like what? Vandalism. Following you. Showing up at your home or workplace. Another pause. I'm recommending you get a restraining order against Judge Crane. On what grounds? Harassment by proxy. His lawyers are conducting a coordinated campaign against you. That creates a pattern. Will it stick? Maybe, maybe not. But it sends a message that you're taking this seriously, and it creates legal consequences if things escalate. Adrian thought about Mia in her room, crying because a kid at school had repeated things his parents said. Thought about Henderson's careful suggestion about transferring schools. Do it, he said. I'll file the paperwork. You'll need to come in and sign it. When? Tomorrow, if possible. I'll be there. After Grimes hung up, Adrian finally went to Mia's room, knocked softly. Can I come in? Okay. She was lying on her bed, facing the wall, still in her school clothes. He sat down on the edge of the mattress. You hungry? Not really. Want to talk? Not really. He sat there for a moment. Then he said, When I was your age, there was this kid in my class, Danny Morrison. His dad worked at the same factory as my mom. One day the factory had layoffs. Danny's dad kept his job. My mom didn't. Mia rolled over to look at him. Danny started saying things, Adrian continued, that my mom got fired because she was lazy, because she wasn't good at her job. It wasn't true, but his dad probably said something at home and Danny repeated it. What did you do? I fought him, gave him a black eye, got suspended for a week. Really? Really. And you know what? It didn't make me feel better. It didn't make the things he said less hurtful. It just got me in trouble. So you think I was wrong? I think you're human, and humans make mistakes when they're hurt and scared. But I also think you're smart enough to learn from them. She was quiet for a moment. Then, did Danny stop saying stuff? No, but eventually I stopped caring what he said, because I knew the truth about my mom, and that was enough. Is that what I'm supposed to do? Stop caring? No, care all you want. Just don't let it control you. Mia sat up. Her hair was a mess, her face still blotchy from crying. Dad, are we going to be okay? Yes. How do you know? Because we're still here, still fighting, still showing up. He pulled her into a hug. And as long as we keep doing that, we'll be okay. She hugged him back, tight. They stayed like that until Adrian's phone buzzed again. This time it was Lena. Turn on the news, channel 7. Adrian let go of Mia and reached for the remote, found channel 7. The anchor was mid-sentence. New development in the Judge Crane scandal. We've just received word that the State Judicial Commission has voted unanimously to suspend Judge Crane pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. This is a significant move, as it marks the first time in over a decade that a sitting judge in this state has been suspended from the bench. They cut to footage of Crane leaving the courthouse, surrounded by lawyers. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Crane's attorney issued a statement calling the suspension politically motivated and vowing to fight it. But legal experts say the evidence against Crane is substantial, and this suspension may be just the beginning. The anchor moved on to the next story. Adrian turned off the TV. Mia looked at him. Does that mean you won? It means the system is working. That's not the same as winning. But he can't be a judge anymore. For now. But there's still a trial, still a process. What if he gets away with it? Then we keep fighting. Different battlefield, same war. His phone buzzed. This time it was a call from Hollis. Adrian, I assume you've seen the news. Just now. This is big. The commission doesn't suspend judges lightly, but the evidence was overwhelming. Your testimony was part of that. What happens next? Criminal charges get filed, probably within the week, and we continue building the civil case, identifying victims, reviewing patterns. This is far from over. I know. But Adrian, this is also a victory. Don't lose sight of that. What you started, it's making a real difference. After they hung up, Adrian sat there on Mia's bed, phone in his hand, feeling the weight of what Hollis had said. A real difference. But it didn't feel real. It felt like chaos. Like everything he'd built for himself and Mia was crumbling, and he was supposed to be grateful because at least it was crumbling for a good reason. Dad? Mia's voice pulled him back. Are you okay? He looked at her. 7 years old and already carrying weight no kid should have to carry. Yeah, kiddo. I'm okay. You don't look okay. Well, I'm a pretty good liar when I need to be. She smiled slightly. First smile he'd seen from her all day. Come on, he said, standing. Let's order pizza. Extra cheese. Can we watch a movie? Something with explosions? Something with princesses? Deal. They ordered food and queued up a movie and tried to pretend for a couple of hours that their lives were normal. That tomorrow wasn't going to bring more complications, more threats, more battles. But tomorrow came anyway, the way it always did. And when it did, Adrian was ready. Tuesday morning, Adrian kept Mia home from school for her suspension. She sat at the kitchen table doing worksheets while he made phone calls. First to Detective Grimes about the restraining order, then to the school to request written documentation of the incident. Henderson's secretary said it would be ready by end of day. At 9:30, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Blake? A man's voice, older with a faint tremor. My name is Donald Whitmore. I'm Judge Crane's father-in-law. Adrian's hand tightened on the phone. What do you want? To apologize. A pause. And to ask for your help. You've got the wrong person. Please, just hear me out. 5 minutes. Adrian glanced at Mia, who was focused on her math problems. He stepped into his bedroom and closed the door. I'm listening. Whitmore took a shaky breath. I've known William for 23 years. He married my daughter Lisa when they were both young. Good man, I thought, smart, ambitious, but over the years something changed. The power, the authority, it got to him. And I watched my daughter become smaller and smaller as he became more convinced of his own importance. This isn't my problem. I know, but what he did to you, what he's done to so many others, Lisa is devastated. She had no idea how bad it had gotten. None of us did. Another pause. She wants to leave him, but she's scared of what he'll do, how he'll retaliate. He still has connections, people who owe him favors. Adrian sat down on the edge of his bed. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person who stood up to him and won. And I thought maybe you could help her understand that it's possible to fight back, that she doesn't have to stay trapped. I'm not a marriage counselor. I know what you are. You're someone who sees injustice and can't walk away from it. My daughter is living in a house with a man who's unraveling, who's angry and desperate and looking for someone to blame. I'm afraid for her safety. Adrian rubbed his face with his free hand. He didn't have the bandwidth for this, didn't have the emotional capacity to take on someone else's family crisis when his own life was barely holding together. But he also couldn't ignore the fear in Whitmore's voice. Have her call Detective Grimes with Metro PD, Adrian said finally. If she's genuinely afraid, she needs to document it. Get protection. That's not something I can help with. She won't go to the police. She's too worried about how it'll look, what people will say. Then she's not ready to leave. Mr. Blake, I'm sorry about your daughter. I really am. But I can't fix her marriage. I can barely keep my own kids safe right now. He hung up before Whitmore could respond. For a moment he just sat there, phone in his hand, feeling the weight of everyone else's problems piling on top of his own. Then he stood up, opened the door, and went back to Mia. Everything okay? She asked without looking up from her worksheet. Yeah, just work stuff. You don't work today. I'm suspended, remember? Right. Forgot. She gave him a look that said she didn't believe him, but wasn't going to push it. At noon, there was a knock on the door. Adrian looked through the peephole and saw Lena standing in the hallway. He opened the door. What are you doing here? Can I come in? He stepped aside. Lena entered and gave Mia a small wave. Hey, you must be Mia. Hi. I'm Lena. I work with your dad. Mia nodded, already back to her worksheets. Adrian led Lena into the small kitchen, out of Mia's earshot. What's going on? He asked quietly. Lena pulled out her phone and showed him a news article. The headline read, Judge Crane hospitalized following apparent breakdown. Adrian read quickly. Crane had been found by his wife early that morning, disoriented and incoherent. Paramedics had taken him to county medical. His lawyer was calling it exhaustion and stress. Sources close to the family suggested it might be more serious. Is this real, or is it a play for sympathy? Adrian asked. Don't know yet, but Hollis wanted me to tell you in person. There's going to be a lot of media attention on this. They'll want your reaction. I don't have one. Good. Keep it that way. She paused. But Adrian, if this is real, if he really is having some kind of breakdown, it might complicate things. His lawyers could argue diminished capacity, mental health issues. It could affect the criminal case. So he hurts people for years and then gets to play the victim card? I'm not saying it's fair, I'm saying it's a possibility. Adrian leaned against the counter. Through the doorway, he could see Mia erasing something on her paper, frustrated. What do you need from me? He asked. Nothing right now, just wanted to make sure you heard it from us first, not from some reporter shoving a microphone in your face. Appreciated. Lena glanced toward Mia, then back at Adrian. How's she doing? She got in a fight at school yesterday, pushed a kid who said I was a criminal. Jesus. Yeah, so we're managing. Lena's expression softened slightly. You know, when I first saw you in that courtroom, I thought you were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Still haven't decided which? Both probably, but mostly brave. She headed for the door, then turned back. Hang in there, Adrian. You're doing something important. After she left, Adrian made lunch for himself and Mia. Grilled cheese sandwiches that were slightly burnt because he wasn't paying attention. They ate in silence, the TV playing something neither of them watched. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Vance. Heard about Crane. You okay? Fine. We should talk. Can you meet tomorrow? Same coffee shop, same time? I'll be there. The rest of the day passed slowly. Mia finished her worksheets and then read a book on the couch, while Adrian tried to focus on the case files Carmen had sent him. But his mind kept drifting to Whitmore's call, to Lisa Crane, trapped in a house with a man who was falling apart. Not his problem, he told himself. He had enough problems. But the thought wouldn't leave. At 3 o'clock, Mrs. Chen knocked on the door. She'd agreed to watch Mia for a couple hours while Adrian went to sign the restraining order paperwork. You sure you're okay with this? Adrian asked her. Of course. Mia and I are friends. Aren't we, sweetheart? Mia nodded from the couch. Adrian drove to the police station downtown. Detective Grimes met him in a small conference room with the paperwork already prepared. This is pretty straightforward, she said, sliding the forms across the table. You're requesting a restraining order against Judge William Crane based on harassment and credible threats. He'll be required to stay at least 300 feet away from you, your residence, and your daughter's school. What if he violates it? Immediate arrest. And it'll hurt his case significantly. Adrian signed where she indicated. 4 different places, his signature looking messier each time. There's something else, Grimes said when he finished. We've been getting calls. People who saw the news about Crane being suspended. They want to file complaints, add their stories to the investigation. How many? 86 as of this morning, and that's just criminal cases. The civil side is getting even more. Adrian set down the pen. 86. Yeah, your case opened the floodgates. People who thought they were alone, who thought no one would believe them, they're coming forward because of you. I didn't do anything special. You stood up. That's more than most people manage. She gathered the paperwork. This goes to a judge for approval, should be finalized by tomorrow. And if Crane's lawyer fights it, let them try. We've got documentation of the threats, the coordinated media campaign, the pattern of retaliation. They'd be idiots to fight this. Adrian drove back to the apartment as the sun started to set. The sky was that particular shade of orange that only happened in October, beautiful and temporary. Inside, Mia and Mrs. Chen were playing cards at the kitchen table. She beat me 3 times, Mrs. Chen said, laughing. This one's too smart. She gets it from her mom, Adrian said. Mia smiled at that. Small victory. After Mrs. Chen left, they made dinner together. Pasta with jarred sauce, nothing fancy. While the water boiled, Mia said, Dad, can I ask you something? Always. When is this going to be over? Adrian turned down the heat on the stove. I don't know, kiddo. Trials take time. Investigations take longer. Could be months. That's a long time. Yeah, it is. And we just have to keep dealing with people being mean. He crouched down to her level. Some people will be mean, but some people will surprise you. They'll be kind when you don't expect it, fair when the world isn't, and those are the people worth paying attention to. Like Mrs. Chen? Exactly like Mrs. Chen. They ate dinner, and then Mia went to take a bath. Adrian cleaned up the kitchen, his mind already on tomorrow's meeting with Patricia, on the work waiting for him at Hollis's office, on the 86 people who'd found the courage to speak up. His phone rang. Marcus from the public defender's office. Adrian, I need you to reconsider my offer. Marcus, just hear me out. I've been following what you're doing with the AG's office. It's good work, important work. But it's temporary. After Crane goes down, then what? You go back to working 2 jobs that don't use half your talent? I'm working with Patricia Vance too, Justice Advocacy Project. Even better, but why not do it all? Come back to the PD's office part-time. We'll work around your schedule with the AG and JAP. You could actually practice again, represent clients who need you. Adrian leaned against the counter. I'd have to reinstate my license. That's just paperwork. You never had any disciplinary issues. You walked away clean. I walked away for a reason. Yeah, because your wife was dying and you had a kid to raise. That reason doesn't exist anymore. Mia's older, you've got support systems in place, and you're already back in the fight. Might as well get paid properly for it. Adrian was quiet for a moment. In the bathroom, he could hear Mia singing something to herself, off-key and happy. Let me think about it, he said finally. You've been thinking about it for 3 days. At some point, you have to decide. I know. Thursday. Give me an answer by Thursday. After they hung up, Adrian sat at the kitchen table and pulled out a legal pad, drew a line down the middle. On one side, he wrote all the reasons to reinstate his license and go back to practicing law. On the other, all the reasons to keep things as they were. The first column filled up quickly. Financial stability. Using his skills, helping people directly. Making a real difference. The second column was shorter. Time away from Mia. Stress. The weight of other people's problems. But as he stared at the two columns, he realized they were asking the wrong question. It wasn't about whether to practice law. It was about what kind of life he wanted to build. One where he played it safe and stayed small, or one where he used what he had to fix what was broken. He already knew the answer, had known it the moment he walked into Crane's courtroom. He just hadn't wanted to admit it. Wednesday morning, Adrian dropped Mia back at school. She was nervous, kept asking if kids would still be mean. Some of them might be, he said honestly. But you're tougher than they are, and you know the truth. That's what matters. Will you pick me up early if I need you to? I'll come the second you call. She hugged him tight before getting out of the car. He watched her walk into the building, shoulders straight, backpack bouncing, proud and terrified in equal measure. At Brewpoint, Patricia was already waiting. She had 2 coffees on the table. Figured you'd want your usual, she said. Thanks. They sat. Patricia pulled out her tablet. I've been reviewing the cases you flagged for Hollis. Good work. Really thorough. Just doing the job. It's more than that. You see patterns other people miss, probably because you've lived it. She paused. I want to offer you something more permanent. Full-time position with JAP, lead investigator for our Judicial Misconduct Division. Adrian drank his coffee. It was still too hot. I appreciate that, but I've got commitments. I know. A G's office, your daughter, the PD offer from Marcus. I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to coordinate. Work with all of us. Be the bridge between the systems. That's a lot of bridges. You're already doing it. Might as well make it official. She slid a folder across the table. Here's what we're proposing. Salary, benefits, flexible schedule. You coordinate investigations across jurisdictions, work with law enforcement and advocacy groups, and help victims navigate the system. No courtroom work unless you want it. No billable hours. Just the work. Adrian opened the folder. The salary was more than he'd made in the past 2 years combined. This is real? He asked. Very real. We've got funding from 3 different foundations. They saw what you did, what it led to, and they want to support it. He looked at the contract, at the salary figure, at the job description that basically outlined everything he'd been doing for free. When do you need an answer? End of the week. But Adrian, I'm going to be honest. We need you, not just for Crane, for all the other judges and prosecutors and cops who think they're above accountability. You've got credibility that nobody else has. Use it. They talked for another hour about the scope of the work, the cases pending, the structure Patricia was building. By the time Adrian left, his head was spinning with possibilities. He drove to the AG's office. Carmen and James had more files waiting for him. He worked through lunch, flagging cases, making notes, calling victims who'd agreed to be interviewed. At 2:30, his phone rang. The school. His stomach dropped. Hello? Mr. Blake, it's Vice Principal Henderson. Everything's fine, but I wanted to let you know Mia had an incident during recess. What kind of incident? Tyler Brennan approached her, started saying things again. But this time, instead of pushing him, Mia walked away and told a teacher. We handled it appropriately. Tyler's parents have been notified. Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. She did the right thing? She did. And I wanted you to know that we're taking steps to make sure this doesn't continue. Tyler will be separated from Mia during unstructured time, and we're implementing some conflict resolution sessions. Thank you. She's a good kid, Mr. Blake, and she's handling this better than a lot of adults would. After they hung up, Adrian allowed himself a moment of pride. Mia was learning, growing, becoming someone who knew how to fight the right way, just like her dad was trying to. Thursday morning brought news that Judge Crane had been formally charged. 6 counts of abuse of power, 3 counts of civil rights violations, 12 counts of misconduct in office. The news ran it as breaking coverage. Adrian's name came up in every report. His phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, lawyers, advocacy groups, people with stories to tell. He ignored most of them, answered the ones that mattered. At noon, he got a call from an unfamiliar number. This time it was a woman. "Mr. Blake? This is Lisa Crane." Adrian went still. "Mrs. Crane? My father said he called you. I told him not to, but he did anyway." Her voice was strained. "I'm not calling to ask for help. I just wanted you to know that I'm leaving William. Today. My father's helping me pack. That's good. And I wanted to apologize for not seeing it sooner, for not stopping him." "That's not on you, isn't it? I lived with him. I saw the anger, the arrogance. I just convinced myself it was the stress of the job, that it didn't matter." She paused. "But it did matter, and people got hurt. And I'm so sorry." Adrian didn't know what to say. This woman hadn't done anything to him personally, but she'd been complicit through silence. "What are you going to do?" he asked finally. "Testify if they need me to. Tell the truth about what I saw. It's the least I can do. It's more than most people would. It's not enough, but it's a start." After she hung up, Adrian sat in his car in the AG's parking lot and thought about courage, about how it showed up in different ways, standing up in a courtroom, walking away from a marriage, pushing a kid who said mean things, then learning not to. All of it took strength, just different kinds. That evening, he made his decision, called Marcus first. "I'll do it, part-time at the PD's office, but I need control over my schedule." "Done. When can you start?" "After I reinstate my license. Couple weeks maybe." "I'll have the paperwork ready." Then he called Patricia. "I'm in. Full-time with JAP, coordinating with the AG and PD's office." "You're going to be busy." "I've been busy. Might as well get paid for it." She laughed. "Welcome aboard." Finally, he called Hollis. "I'm staying on as consultant, but I'm also taking positions with JAP and the PD's office. That going to be a problem?" "As long as there's no conflict of interest, you can work for whoever you want. We need you, Adrian, however we can get you." That night, Adrian sat Mia down after dinner. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I'm going to be working more. Different jobs, but all related to what happened with Judge Crane." She looked worried. "How much more?" "I don't know yet, but I promise. 3 o'clock, I'm done. That time is yours, always." "What if you're in a meeting? Then I leave the meeting." "What if it's important?" "You're more important." She considered that. "Okay, but Dad?" "Yeah?" "I'm proud of you for fighting back, even when it's hard." He pulled her into a hug. "I'm proud of you too, kiddo." Friday afternoon, Detective Grimes called. "Crane's out of the hospital. His lawyer's trying to delay the arraignment, claiming mental health issues. But the DA's not buying it." "When's the arraignment?" "Monday, 10 a.m. You should be there." "I'll be there." Monday morning, Adrian put on his navy blazer, the same one he'd worn to Crane's courtroom that first day. It still didn't fit right in the shoulders, but it was what he had. Mia asked if she could come. He said no, too much media attention. She accepted it, but made him promise to tell her everything after. The courthouse was packed, news crews, protesters, people holding signs. Some supporting Crane, claiming he was being railroaded. Most supporting accountability. Adrian walked through the crowd with his head up. Cameras followed him. He didn't stop. Inside, Lena was waiting. "You ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." They went into the courtroom. It was the same one where everything had started, but it felt different now. Fuller. Heavier, with anticipation. Judge Crane was led in wearing a suit instead of robes, handcuffed, looking older than Adrian remembered. Their eyes met for a brief second. Crane looked away first. The arraignment took 20 minutes. Crane pleaded not guilty. The judge, a different one, brought in from another district, set bail at $200,000. Crane's lawyer argued it was excessive. The judge didn't budge. When it was over, Adrian walked out into the hallway. Hollis was there, along with Carmen and James. Patricia Vance stood nearby with her legal team. Marcus had come too, and Julia Madison, Sarah's old friend. And in the back, partially hidden by the crowd, Adrian saw Robert Chen and Margaret Foster and dozens of other faces he recognized from case files and phone calls. People whose lives had intersected with Crane's courtroom and came out damaged. They weren't there for revenge. They were there for witness, for the simple act of showing up and saying, "This happened and it mattered." A reporter pushed through the crowd. "Mr. Blake, how do you feel now that Judge Crane has been charged?" Adrian looked at the camera, at all the people watching. "I feel like the system worked," he said. "Eventually. Not perfectly, not quickly, but it worked. And that's what matters." Well, what would you say to other people who've experienced judicial misconduct? That you're not alone, that your story matters, and that speaking up, even when it's terrifying, can change things. Do you think justice will be served? I think we're going to find out. He walked away before they could ask more questions. Outside, the October sun was bright and cold. He checked his phone. 2:45, 15 minutes to get to Mia's school. He made it with 5 minutes to spare. When Mia came out, she ran to the car and climbed in. "How'd it go?" she asked immediately. "He pleaded not guilty. There'll be a trial." "Will you have to testify?" "Probably." "Are you scared?" "A little, but mostly I'm just tired." "Can we get ice cream?" Adrian smiled. "Yeah, kiddo, we can get ice cream." They drove to the shop near their apartment. Mia got chocolate chip cookie dough. Adrian got black coffee because ice cream had never been his thing. They sat at one of the small tables by the window and watched people walk past. Normal people living normal lives. "Dad?" Mia said, licking her spoon. "Do you think things will go back to normal after the trial?" Adrian thought about that, about his 3 jobs and the 86 people still waiting for someone to hear their stories, about the work that would continue long after Crane was sentenced. "No," he said honestly. "I don't think they will. But maybe that's okay. Maybe normal wasn't working anyway. What do we do instead? We build something better." She seemed to accept that. Went back to her ice cream. Adrian's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for what you did. My brother was in Crane's court 3 years ago. Reading about your case gave me the courage to reopen his. We're filing an appeal next week. You changed our lives." He stared at the message for a long moment. Then he put the phone away. "Everything okay?" Mia asked. "Yeah, everything's okay." They finished their ice cream and drove home. The apartment still had water damage in the bathroom. The landlord still hadn't fixed it, but Adrian had filed formal complaints with the housing authority and the state licensing board. Someone would deal with it eventually. That night, after Mia went to bed, Adrian sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. Applications for license reinstatement pulled up on the screen. He filled them out methodically, answering questions about his employment history, his reason for letting the license lapse, his plans for returning to practice. In the section asking why he wanted to reinstate, he wrote, "Because there's work that needs doing, and I'm capable of doing it. Simple. True. Enough." He submitted the applications and closed the laptop. Through the window, he could see the lights of the city. Thousands of windows, thousands of lives, most of them untouched by what had happened in courtroom 3B. But some of them were touched. Some of them had been waiting for someone to show them it was possible to fight back. And now they knew. Adrian thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made to do something that mattered, to not just survive but live. He was keeping that promise. Messy and imperfect and exhausting as it was, he was keeping it. His phone buzzed one more time. A text from Lena. "Good job today. Get some rest. Tomorrow we keep fighting." Adrian smiled slightly and typed back, "Tomorrow we keep fighting." He turned off the lights and went to bed. In the morning, there would be more cases to review, more victims to interview, more battles to fight. The work would never really be finished, but tonight, Mia was safe. The system had moved one step closer to accountability, and Adrian Blake, single father, former lawyer, reluctant hero, had proven that standing up was possible, even when it cost everything, even when it was terrifying, even when it would have been easier to walk away. He'd stood up. And in doing so, he'd given others permission to do the same. That was enough. For now, it was enough.